Burr, chilly, chilly. Walkie, sweaty. Hope you're having a good morning wherever you are and trying to stay warm as we've got a chilly start to the day. On the panel this morning, joining us in the studio, Trudie Mason. Hi, Trudie.
Good morning.
He is a strategic consultant at Syrus, and you may know him as a former Liberal cabinet minister, Jean-Marc Fournier.
Hello, Elias.
Guys, in a few moments, we'll be talking about minimum wage. And if you're listening to me right now, I do want to know from you. Shoot me a text at 514-800. How much should minimum wage be? Because there's actually a group who says it should be $18 an hour. So I want to know from you. 514-800. Let me know what minimum wage should be. But we're going to start off with the mayor of this city, Valerie Plante, who did not like to hear any criticism of snow removal and the first major snowfall of the season, particularly how a lot of people were noticing that the bike paths seem to be a little bit more cleared, a little bit nicer off than the roads and the sidewalks. Let's listen to Valerie Plante.
It has to stop. People should be able to use the sidewalk and roads, but it's not a competition, and it's not like it's not something say, oh, let's do the cycling path first, so other people will be not happy about this. This needs to stop. I really hope that people can see a bigger picture, that the city of Montreal has tools and operations that just sometimes one can go faster, but it's not like they're privileging. They're just doing their job.
Now, I've spoken to members of Projet Montreal, and I've told them, guys, just for imaging, just for how you look, don't bother. Don't even touch the bike lanes until the sidewalks and the roads are done. Then do the bike lanes. I'm just like, for your own political purposes, avoid cleaning the bike lanes too quickly, too early. What do you guys think? Do you think the perception is real, or it's just drivers who think,
I don't share your recommendation. I don't think that it's okay to wait for one to do the others. I think there are different teams that are using different tools to do it. That's the point. But what I would like to add is that Madame Plante maybe should remind that her personage is with a smile. Uh-huh. And when there's criticism, it's just normal. It's part of her political life and her decision-making life. So she should not try to lecture people about stop criticizing or things like that. Well, people have the right to criticize, and it's up to you to take the right decision. And at the end, it's not because the bike path is cleaner than the others, is that the fact that the sidewalk, not today, not this year, not last year. It's a long history about the fact that we do it later, and that's a bad thing. So we should focus more on doing the right thing than making a competition between the road, the bike path, and the sidewalk.
But I see why people are ticked, and she doesn't have a right to get shirty on this question, quite frankly, because from a numbers perspective, it doesn't make sense that any equipment is devoted to the 20 people who will insist on cycling in a snowstorm when there are people slipping and sliding and hurting themselves on sidewalks. So it's a question of personnel and equipment management. You don't just, make up a number of employees to drive the big plows and another number of employees to drive plows that'll fit on a bike path. That's management. You manage that. You assign personnel. And what I think that she needs to be doing is making sure that there is never a case where a sidewalk is not plowed and the bike path beside it is. That should be number one. Do not plow the bike path before the sidewalk on any given street, because that'll just send pedestrians into a tizzy. There are more pedestrians than cyclists. More people risk being injured. And I don't think that it's right that you mismanage your resources to the point that you're putting more people in danger for some ideological point you want to make about year-round cycling.
I got a text here that says, Elias, I'm not defending the mayor, but different contractors and much easier to clear a bike path with no trees, no parked cars, nothing in the way versus streets and sidewalks. Again, I'm not defending, just explaining. This is from Mike, who says he's a happy SUV owner who's going to get dinged in some other way by this administration. I just think it comes down to imaging. I think it's not a good look when I'm walking in during a snowstorm and the bike paths are clear and the sidewalks are treacherous.
And if the image is not serving you, well, you've got to enter into a pedagogy exercise. And I think that more than lecturing people, she could or should explain what are the tools they are using, what are the energy they are putting in it, and try to expose the fact that they are doing everything they could. And Trudie is right. There's a question of managing and resources, but she had to explain how she managed it. And I think that it's part of her role. It's a big part of her role to try to go over the image if there's another story. And the answer is not stop criticize.
Shouldn't, in a city with limited resources, right? The budget is not unlimited, right? Shouldn't they say, hey, you know what? December through February, bike paths aren't going to be touched, and we're doing it for cost-saving measures so we can focus on sidewalks. Why are we doing it at all? Linda, by the way, texted me and said this: in the winter, bike paths should be used to blow snow into to reduce the costs for the snow removal trucks. You're right; it's right there. It's doing nothing. It's a space that can be used because it's not being used as much as it is. Listen, I'll say this: Montreal has become a kind of a biking city. You see those bike paths during the summer; they're swamped. But once the temperature is at -10, like it is this morning, there's nobody on those bike paths, right? So why in a city that has a budget crunch where there's not unlimited funds, do we bother with this during the winter months? I don't think it's unreasonable to tell cyclists, like, hey, if you're those pros that want to cycle all year, well, you're so good at cycling, you can be on the roads with the cars anyways, right? I mean, you're probably a professional cyclist. And for everyone else, take the bus, take public transit, right? We tell motorists all the time, take public transit.
Just say one thing: if you use a car in Montreal street, in your car, it's not easy on the street. So if you want to suggest that cyclists go with the cars on the street, I'm not sure it's
they already do it. Like how many of those?
You're right on that.
Those pro cyclists, right, that don't even use the bike paths. They refuse to use the bike paths because they're too full in the summer, and they go on city streets anyways because it's faster for them.
But one thing I want to say: you said Montreal is more a cyclist city than before. I think that's a good thing. Yeah. And I think that if we look what we were 20 years ago or 10 years ago, it's amazing, and it's good to see. Not that it is easy to live with cars and pedestrian and cyclists, but it's a good thing. So I would suggest that the mayor is more clear about what are the intention, what she really believe in, and how is she going to do it. But I don't want to make an opposition between pedestrian and cyclists. And I think that for that, we need to know more about the tools they've got to help one and the other.
Well, I think we also maybe have to ask some questions about manpower fluidity in the City of Montreal organization, because there's probably some union rule that if you drive a sidewalk plow, you're not qualified to drive one of those plows that does bike paths, and there's no cross training. It's official. I get it. It's complicated to manage the manpower, but you're talking about people in some cases suffering life-threatening injuries. If you're a senior and you fall and break a hip on a patch of ice on a sidewalk, you're in the hospital maybe for months. Your life is in danger. So not to recognize that and prioritize that is beyond me.
I just want to read Nadine's text message. She's in a Huntsick, and she writes this: most hardcore cyclists ride on the street anyways. No reason to spend money on bike paths in the winter. It's ridiculous. And I would agree with Nadine. Moving on now, we're continuing on the panel with Jean-Marc Fournier and Trudie Mason. Let's talk quickly about your old party, Jean-Marc, the Liberal Party of Quebec. And we may have a leader in the waiting. His name is Alexandre Cusson. He is the mayor of Drummondville, also was the president of the Union of Quebec Municipalities. He just resigned his post yesterday, and a lot of people are saying, oh, he resigned because the next step is leader of the Liberal Party. A, is this the guy? And B, does he check off everything the Liberals need at this moment to combat the CAQ, who seem to be terribly popular in Les Régions?
Well, I guess the answer will be in May. If ever he said that he will really be a candidate at this right moment, he is thinking about it, and I think that's really a good thing. I was publicly here on your show during the summer saying that Dominique is a good candidate, but a race would be good. I publicly said that I was making some action to be sure that a race would be there, and so I did talk with Alexandre.
Ooh, tell me more. Tell me more.
Well, it's public. It's in the paper, so everybody knows it. But it's the fact that we need a race, and it's not that I'm supporting one or the other. I'm supporting both. And at the end, it's the members who are going to decide. And is he checking all the boxes for the Liberal Party? Well, we'll see. The campaign will have to start for that.
You can't go to a hockey game and cheer for both teams. You know what I mean?
Yes.
At a certain point.
Sometimes you can do it if you're, let's say, the umpire, or you want to look at it with an objective view. And I was the chef par intérim. I was leader for a long time, and I was let's say I was taking pressure for all the party for a long time, and I think that it's just clear for me in my head that maybe my best contribution is not to be part of one team or the other, but more to represent the wish of members, a big numbers of members who want to have a race, and I think that it's a good thing for a Democratic Party to have a race.
Okay, so just look at this guy, Alexandre Cusson, and you see he's the mayor of Drummondville, which is the 10th biggest city in Quebec. Is this the kind of is he the guy? And when I say that, I mean, does he fit that template that the Liberals need to fight against François Legault?
Well, and Trudie's looking at me.
I have another question, too.
Very good. No, the thing is that, and people have noticed that, he is coming from Drummondville. He was president de l'UMQ, so he's got contact with every mayor in every region of Quebec, and having the Liberal Party reconnect with all the region of the province is a good thing. Now, it's going to depend about what will be his speech, what is his vision. As for Dominique, because she's candidate since June, but we did not hear about her so much. Well, the race is not started. It's going to start in 2 weeks. But if there's a competition, I guess we will know more. They will be forced to be more active, and that would help the party. And if that helped the party, at the end, it's help Quebecers to have a new foundation for the Liberal Party. There's a new generation. Dominique and Alexandre are younger than we were, and that's a good thing to face the CAQ with values that are liberals.
I wanted to talk about what attracted you to Cusson on the level of the fact that he's from the regions and taking the fight to the CAQ into the regions where they're strong. Is that one of the reasons that you spoke to him, specifically because he's from Drummondville and he knows the other mayors?
First, I was not the only one who's talked to him. Secondly, yes, he's from Drummondville, and it's an economic success in that city. He's got values that are similar or the liberal values, and that is a good point. But I'm not saying that I know all about what Alexandre will put on the table for the members, as I don't know what all Dominique will put on the table. What I think is that the Liberal needs a race to reconnect and think again about what will be the next 10 years of Quebec, not the past 10 years. And the future is with that generation, and I think it's going to be a good race.
Let's talk about the current government, the CAQ, and one question that's been posed to them this week, and that is, where are the female decision makers? You look at this government, and it seems to be that all the major decisions being done by François Legault and Simon-Jolin Barrette and Jean-François Roberge, and even on the cannabis issue, Daniel McCann was AWOL and it was Lionel Carmont. Where are the big decision makers that are women in this government? Do women have the right, have enough place in François Legault's cabinet? Are these questions valid?
Well, I think there's the difference between what is the perception of the public
and the reality.
And the reality. Madame McCann is at the head of the health department. It's half the budget of the state, you know. So and when you look at that, you could answer, well, she's got a lot of power. And the level of perception, well, the perception is that Mr. Legault is really the boss, and maybe that's what put us to forget about who was the other. But certainly, Sonia Lebel is probably one minister who has a lot of power. But then again, Fitzgibbon is very, very important. Girard is very, very important. So, and we don't hear so much about them. But I think that Fitzgibbon is probably the second in that team after François Legault is probably Fitzgibbon.
Okay.
Well, I actually don't have a problem with the makeup of his cabinet. And when you look at usually the top three, in terms of public contact, the top three ministries are generally health and education, because they're huge and they touch everybody's daily life, and then finance, obviously for taxation and money reasons and stuff like that. So out of those three, you have one woman there in health in McCann. But if you add justice, which is another high-powered thing, in the top four, it's split 50-50. Normally, we've been seeing a lot of Simon Jolin Barrette. Normally, immigration at the provincial level is not really a hot ministry. That doesn't create a lot of headlines. So it's just that in this particular government, because of their campaign promises, we're seeing a lot of him. I would think that in the coming months, we're going to be seeing a lot more health questions, for example. Justice sometimes pops up. It depends on what's going on in society and in the news. But I don't know if and the deputy minister is female. Are we nitpicking now? He had parity. He had gender parity when he formed his cabinet.
Well, and one thing about justice, and I was at some point in my life I was a justice minister, but it's not just on the TV or the public representation that we made. It's in committee that you make your work, And about Simon Jolin Barrette and his immigration thing, something didn't work. Is it because Jolin Barrette and Madame Lebel have friction? They had friction between them some months ago. But normally justice is there at those committee to express what is the rule of law. And maybe at that time there was a problem.
All right, I want to talk about minimum wage here. Quebec's largest union, they represent almost 50% of all unionized workers in this province, the FTQ, are saying that one of their demands could be a minimum wage of $17 or $18 an hour. On my text line, how is one supposed to be able to live on minimum wage? It's impossible for anyone to live on the current $12.50 per hour. Food, fuel, all the basic necessities. $18 minimum wage, far-fetched or something to be looked at?
I think we'll be lucky if we get 15. Yes, everybody deserves a minimum wage that supports basic necessities. I went to a seminar by the Fraser Institute, which is an economic think tank, always accused of being very right-leaning, but what they actually are economists who tend to be free marketers. But what they say is that raising the minimum wage backfires because what employers do when they have to pay their workers more is they cut the workforce. And so fewer people will get a chance to work those jobs. And because young people often get their first entry-level jobs at minimum wage, that means fewer jobs for young people looking to earn money to put themselves through school and so on. So their argument is you raise the minimum wage, it's bad for young and inexperienced workers because there are fewer jobs. I don't know if I'm buying that. I think it's a very convenient explanation to keep people poor because it doesn't acknowledge that it's not just, in this day and age, it's not just 18-year-olds doing minimum wage jobs. It's people who are doing them for years and supporting families.
And I would add, if the FTQ want to put that idea on the table, they should start with talking with leader union in Ontario and New Brunswick before talking to Quebec.
Why?
It's because when you take decision like that, you have to look at the geographical, fiscal life around you, and if the separation or the difference between the level in Quebec and New Brunswick and Ontario is too huge, too big, well, there's going to have effect to business going to go there. So you've got to manage to have a zone that there's an equilibrium. If they want to do it, let's rediscover that outside of Quebec in Ontario, there are other Canadians, just like Quebecers, who want to have $18. Let's talk with them. Let's talk with people in New Brunswick. And then you're going to have a strength that's going to bring a conversation with the three governments. And that could change. But if you are isolated in your place, he's just playing and having a speech for his own base, not to achieve the result he wants.
To me, the concern is we really have never seen this kind of economic disparity ever, right? Where the poor are making so little and the rich are making so much. I think there's got to be a way that forces companies to pay their employees more. Now, I don't know if right away $18 is the way to do it, but I in places in the U.S. where they've increased the minimum wage, to the $15 level, that same argument that the Fraser Institute says, it's going to never panned out. All that happened was people were able to spend more money. And by the way, when you pay minimum wage employees $15, $16, $17, what they do is they spend it in the economy. It actually works out, and they go out and they buy, they buy necessities, they buy groceries. It helps things out. It actually, I can understand how if you're a small business owner and you've got you've got 2 or 3 employees and you own a small shop, how that could be a hurt when things are already so tight. But for bigger companies, I think this is something that really has to be looked at as a way to sort of get a little more money into the pockets of just everyone.
Well, but can I point out there are other ways. If what you're concerned about is people supporting families, adults, not a teenager who's going to work fast food for a year to get tuition money. If you're looking at the welfare of families, I think it might be another way to help them to offer benefits, because dental coverage, if you've aged out of the Medicare coverage of dental, it's so expensive. People neglect it. It affects their health. Just being able to have like a company shared RRSP or something where they can start building for their retirement. You look at that release that we got a few days ago from Amazon going into Lachine with 300 jobs. Nothing in the release about the base wage, but lots
bonuses.
Bonuses. They're going to have full dental and health coverage. They're going to have a group RRSP. They're going to have tuition support for workers in disciplines.
And it did make me think about how in Ontario, when they raised the minimum wage to $15 all in one shot, remember how like some chains like Tim Hortons, that kind of stuff, what did they dump? They dumped the benefits.
And you know what Ashton said in Quebec right now, the poutine is cost more after midnight because they've got to pay more their people. Well, I'm not talking about the poutine, but shortage of resources, of manpower, make that have to be a raise.
Jean-Marc Fournier, Trudie Mason, thanks so much.